The following is a production of Mosaic in Whittier, California, a community of faith, hope, and love.
Genesis chapter 25. I forgot about this story until I had lunch with a young man on Friday at, it doesn't really matter where I had lunch, right? Not part of the story. But we did have Mexican food. And no, it wasn't that good. Let me tell you the story here about this guy named Jacob. Jacob's destiny, I'm talking about Jacob's deception, Jacob being deceived, and then Jacob being defined. And so here, what happened is that as somebody we know, he was a child of a promise, son of a child of promise, and he has a twin. His twin, his name is Esau. If you read the scriptures, if you see a place called Edom in southern Israel, that's his brother's tribe and ancestors, descendants. Jacob becomes Israel as the father of the nation of Israel. And he was the second born. His mom was concerned about that, as moms are, I guess at times, what's going on, what's happening here, God told her you're having twins, and the older will serve the younger, which is completely different than the culture would have dictated. And so the time for her to give birth, there were twin boys in her womb. The first to come out was red, a ginger. And his whole body was like a hairy garment. Ew. So they named him Esau, which is ew, and it means red. Have any of you ever been present at a birth? There's a lot of stuff going on. Madness. After this, his brother came out with his hand grasping Esau's heel. That, you have to picture that in your head. I don't know how you do what you see, but it's a little tiny hand grabbing a little tiny foot. And you know how cute little baby hands are. Their entire fist can barely get your little finger. Like, let go, hey, let go. But so he grabbed on to his brother's heel, and they named him Jacob, which is heel catcher. There's some other reasons why that's significant. Isaac was 60 years old when Rebekah gave birth to them. The boys grew up, and Esau became a skillful hunter, became a man's man, a man of the open country, while Jacob was content to stay at home on the tents. Totally get that guy. Get bro. And Isaac, who had a taste for wild game, loved Esau, but Rebekah loved Jacob. And let's see here. Yeah. So once when Jacob was cooking stew, so Jacob became, a cook, right? Obvious. Which, again, I understand that because one of the reasons why I never played sports, besides being completely incompetent, was that my mom and dad worked outside the home. My dad was a cook, my mom was a seamstress, and then my older sister worked at a clothing store. So I was the next one up to come home after school and start dinner. And so I get that. When Esau came in from the open country famished, he said to Jacob, "Quick, give me some of that red stew, I'm famished." That's why he's also called Edom. And Jacob replied, yeah, sure, no worries. Sell me your birthright. That's a big deal, a huge deal. The firstborn gets everything, gets the money, gets the name. He becomes the patriarch of the family. He calls the shots. He becomes in charge. That's a huge deal. And it tells you something that even though we jump from birth to many years later, it seems that Jacob wanted that for a long time and perhaps was just waiting for the right opportunity to take advantage of his dumber older brother. I don't know, just a little bit slow. And so what does Esau say? Well, I'm about to die. What good is a birthright to me? Exaggeration. And, no, bro, swear to me first. Swear. Please swear. So he swore an oath to him, selling his birthright to Jacob. The transaction is complete. Now, you may not think that's a big deal, but that verbal contract is just like a written contract for us. And so then Jacob gave Esau some bread and some lentil stew. He ate, he drank, he got up and left. And so Esau despised or thought very little of his birthright. So you're in the story of Jacob. Committee arrest for those of you who are film students. You just jump right into the story. Here's a guy who already had a sense of, and I recognize that sometimes when a pastor helps interpret somebody in the story, he's giving you a little bit about who he is. So you're going to figure this out quickly. He was obviously a kind of a strategic guy who was always looking for an opportunity to take advantage of an opportunity. And he saw one and he did it. And this was manipulation at its worst. So he gets the inheritance, he gets the family line, he becomes the patriarch. Now, no one else knows this besides the two brothers. So we jump to Genesis 27, and here's what happens here. So Isaac thinks he's dying, and he's about to pass on the birthright. And when he lays hands and passes on that birthright, again, another physical, verbal blessing, it's a written contract. It's as good, done. So the he here is Jacob. And since Esau was supposed to get the blessing, what happens, this is so weird, his mom, Jacob's mom, was involved in this scheme and puts on hairy skin on him and makes him wear Esau's clothes so that he stinks like nature, because nature smells. Let's just be honest. And so he goes in there wearing Esau's clothes and some hairy skin on his top of his arms. It said that Jacob was a smooth man, and I get that too. Truly a Mexican hairless. And then, hello, Dad, this is Esau, trying to pretend. He went to his father. My father, yes, my son. Who is it? Like, you smell like Esau, but you sound a little like the loafer, like Jacob. And so Jacob said, I'm Esau, your firstborn. First lie. I have done as you told me. Second lie. Please sit up and eat some of my game so that you may give me your blessing. Because what Jacob didn't believe it. You could tell that maybe this is not him. So he says, oh, well then why don't you go hunt some game that I really love, and make that stew for me that I really love. And Mom did it for Jacob. How did you come to find it so quickly, my son? The Lord gave me success. Third lie. Then Isaac said to Jacob, come here so I can touch you, my son. You get a sense like something's fishy here, and it's not the stew. To know whether you are really my son Esau or not. Oh, here's the moment of truth. Now, Isaac has poor eyesight. So Jacob went close to his father. Oh man, is this going to work? Moment of truth. And he touched him, and he said, man, the voice is Jacob, but the hands are the hands of Esau. Let's go to the next one. He didn't recognize him, for his hands were hairy like those of his brother Esau, so he proceeded to bless him. He's still not sure. Are you really Esau? I am. Which lie is it? Fourth. My son, bring me some of your game to eat. He brought some wine, blessed them. Here, kiss me. He went to him, kissed him. Isaac caught the smell of his clothes. Okay, it's really you. And then there's a bit of a prayer where he blesses him. I want you to catch this, that the identity is always going to be a picture of your ability. Who you say you are is always a picture of really your ability. A couple weeks ago, I gave a talk at Viola's Women's Fellowship. They invited me thinking I was a woman. Applied with lipstick and heels. Hello! And then, no, I came as a man. And, no, I didn't. Even if you showed up, you were not. So I shared a bit of my story about some things about how God loves us, and you've heard some of this talk. And so just the other day, a woman who was there who knew me and knew Lily and knew us for years said, oh, I didn't know your husband was an adult child of abuse. And this is the honest truth. I have never thought of myself as that. Not once. That my dad had issues with alcoholism, my dad had issues with adultery, my dad had issues with, was his punching bag, but I never thought of myself as an adult child of alcohol, an adult child of divorce, or an adult child of abuse. I thought I was just a horrible human being that hated my father and needed forgiveness, since I knew that first and foremost, I'm a follower of Jesus. In fact, I can tell you honestly, I don't even think of my ethnic identifier as an identifier. I was always surprised when Christians say, well, as a Hispanic Latino Christian, that doesn't make sense to me. Why would you put Hispanic, Latino in front of Christian. That should be the overriding identifier if you're a follower of Jesus. And so what I've come to see when people have certain terms, good or bad, I have woo, I have, ideation, I'm an enabler, I'm a this, I'm Chris Sanchez, I'm whatever label you have, no matter how bad it is. If you're a follower of Jesus, that's your identity. And it's in that identity where we sang it earlier, that quote, my shame is undone. So understand this connection. What you think is your identity will always be your ability. Period. They're linked. They're linked. Now, so we see a bit of Jacob's destiny. He grabs the birthright. God had told his mom, I'm going to give it to him. Jacob says, oh, awesome. Why don't I just take it? He lies to his brother, deceives his brother to get it. But now the tables are going to be turned on him. Let's go to Genesis 29. So what happened is that Esau was ticked off that his brother had ripped him off. And he vowed, I will not rest until I kill my brother. And Esau probably could. So Jacob takes off. He goes to see his uncle. He figures, well, at least I'll have some refuge with a family member. But now I want you to understand what happened. By taking what God said, I'm going to give you, he lost everything that God said he was going to give him. He didn't have a home. He didn't have a land. He didn't have a family. He was on the run. He had no protection. And he was done. It was over. Game over. Game over, man. Predator 2. But he believed in the power of love. Incorrectly, though. Jacob was in love with Rachel and said, I will work 7 years in return for your younger daughter, Rachel. Here's what happened. No, I don't have a picture of her. Jacob shows up with his uncle and sees some of his family. One young woman was named Leah, and another woman was named Rachel. And Leah would be that young woman that says, oh my gosh, she's got a great personality. She is so nice. Dude, she is. Well, she's smart. She's smart. Okay, that's what people say about Leah. Who's Rachel? Dude, have you seen Rachel? And so Jacob sees Rachel. He's not blind, unlike his father. So he tells his uncle, hey bro, how much for Rachel to marry her? And I'll work for you in 7 years. And it says here, but they seemed like only a few days to him because of his love for her. Aww. He's about to experience a few more days. So Jacob said to Laban, a bit crass. Give me my wife. I want to make love to her. Slow down, bro. Dial it back a little bit. And so let's go to the next part of the story. Perfect. So Laban brought together all the people of the place to give a feast. This is the wedding feast. But when evening came, he took his daughter Leah and brought her to Jacob. And Jacob made love to her. And Laban gave his servant Zilpah to his daughter as an attendant. Okay, so how did that happen? Come on, any of you you've been to a nightclub, you don't know what you're doing sometimes, right? So you have a party, it's dark, there's the veil, there's the makeup, you see just a pair of eyes, you think, oh, that's her. Right? One or two Jewish sodas and, you're out and vamonos. And so what happened is that he thought he was going to bed with Rachel, but he woke up with Leah. Poor Leah, man. You cannot feel for her. Hey, baby, you turn. What a horrible, horrible honeymoon it was before Leah. And you gotta feel for her, man. What have you done to me? I served you for Rachel, didn't I? Why have you deceived me? Jeez, bro, really? Karma, yin yang, what goes around comes around. What you sow, you reap. There's a universal law that it is what it is. You live like an animal, you're going to die like an animal. If you live like a liar, you will be lied to. It just is. Let me show those paintings. Let's see here, real fast. And we'll jump into it. So this is Isaac, not a photo. This is Jacob lying. Look at his hairy hands. Look at those monkey hands he's got there, lying to his dad. This is obviously 16th century Dutch master. Welcome. Glad you woke up. And beautiful painting. Look at that beard. It almost looks like you could just touch it, doesn't it? Can we go to the next one? So this is in the morning after. This is Leah represented with the crown. And this is one of the ways that nudity is used in painting is to, a metaphor is innocence. And if you notice in the painting, the only person that's lit up and has light is Leah. Another metaphor for innocence. And that's Jacob saying, dude, what the heck, you know? Leah, cover up. And then so that's Laban over there on the other side, this nonchalant with the stick and the dog. Obviously another 16th century representation painting. Well, let's go to the next slide. I think the next painting, picture, photograph. The photo. So Leah, you know, just super loyal, just good person, right? But then there's Rachel, and you know, it's not hard to choose which one you're going to choose. This is what it is. Don't hate the messenger. I'm just telling you what Jacob did. I would have totally chosen Leah. Okay. Let's go back to Genesis 29 just a moment. We're getting crazy. Genesis 29. And yes, okay. Now here's the one thing I want to tell you before I get to the close of this short conversation. This is what happens often when people choose love as the. In the West, we have a strange notion of love where it's almost completely romantic. This is why I reread to you 1 Corinthians 13 the other day. That it's not the romantic type of love that we have made it to become. By the way, I'm all for romance. I'm not anti-romantic. Anti-romantic, yes. I'm not that guy. Hello, Latino, you know, I mean, I do that thing. But my point is that we, if you have not been redeemed by love, you will put a lot of significance and value into romantic love. I am convinced that love redeems us, but it must be the love of the Redeemer. Otherwise, you're placing way too much significance and importance on a person to give you meaning and significance, and it's an impossible task. Some of you know people that they cannot be without a boyfriend, they cannot be without a girlfriend. They're always in and out of one relationship or the other. There was one for a few days for the excitement, for the chase, and the thrill. Once that person is caught, it's like, I don't know what to do with them now. Let me go on to chase someone else. You've met those fractured people that don't know how to maintain a long-term dating relationship. It seems like their dating life, they're just practicing for divorce. And I mean that seriously. One of the ways I know someone is beginning to become ready for marriage is that if they have a long-term, non-sexual, same-sex friendship. Because those are hard to maintain. Be friends with somebody for years. Go through the bumps and highs and lows of a friendship. Be able to reconcile when you bump heads, as you will. And if you're able to do that for several years, you're developing the muscle to have a relationship with a spouse. But until you are redeemed by the Redeemer, by His love, you will always look for someone else to give you significance. Guys, you get this right when you meet this girl and she's really something, for some reason she falls for you, especially if other guys really liked her. Like, oh my gosh, we could never date. I'll just throw a name out there. So if you're Deborah, you don't get this about. I can never, oh my gosh, Deborah. Have you seen Deborah? Do you know who Deborah is? And then, he's like, oh, yeah, I'm going out with her. Dude, you're going out with Deborah. I didn't know any better. I just figured that half the struggle of a relationship was just showing up and asking. And prior to Lily, because Lily said once we were married, I got to stop dating. But prior to Lily, okay. I just assumed that you could just ask people to go out and they would say yes. And 99 times out of 100, I was correct. At one time, got wine in the face, but that was okay. I figured it was her problem. She wasted her wine. It's cheap. dudes were chasing Lilia when I asked her out, which was the first night I met her. It was hilarious, you know. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna take the next hour. Now the point is that you just have to ask. But here's the thing, I know what happens is that a lot of times men and women put a lot of significance on the fact that they have a person. You cannot even stand to be alone. You feel like you're validated only if someone loves you. That's true when it's the Savior. You place an incredibly impossible task on another human being if they are the measure of your significance. Jerry Maguire is a big fat liar. No one completes you. That's a lie. That's a lie. The only one that does that is your Savior, is God Himself. But for Jacob, I mean, Rachel says he was beautiful in form. So she was sexually attractive. She was pretty. Who knows? Maybe she had a good personality. I don't know. But whatever she was, Jacob wanted it. And for a man that felt that he had lost everything, to gain her would mean everything. So, as I mentioned once before, that Rachel thing could be not just a human, it could be a job. How many of you are like, oh, if I just get to be that manager, then my life will be complete. If I get to live in this zip code, drive that car, own that suit, anything that you can put on, own, buy, show it for, it's on a business card, you can lose it. It's nothing. And I'm telling you as a person who did that and then lost it. But the thing that was consistent was God's love for me all the time. And so I can save you years of trying to find some sort of significance as a human being, is find it in the love of your Redeemer. And here's the last part I want to talk to you about. As we get to the last, let me set this up. So the years have gone by. Laban, Jacob's uncle, and him they're just butting heads over and over. It's time to go. So he takes both his wives and the kids, all 12 of them, the nation of Israel, the future nation of Israel, and they go. On the way over there, he hears about a guy named Esau, his brother, who's coming with a couple hundred guys out to meet him. Talk about holding a grudge. And Jacob, who had lied to his earthly father about who he was about to face his heavenly father. Here's the story. That night, Jacob got up and took his 2 wives, his 2 female servants, and his 11 sons and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. He sent them across the stream and all this stuff. So Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until daybreak. Now, if you go too fast, you have to think about this. If you've ever been in a fight, like every movie, TV shows, a fight goes on for like a half hour, they're always standing, lies. It's in 15 seconds, it's on the ground. It's ground and pound. That's what it is. And and if any of you have been in a fight, you know in 5 minutes you're tired. Now, if this is correct, and I think it is, this went on all night. Some sort of wrestling. If you want to call it a metaphor for spiritual emotional wrestling, that's okay. Either way, that's a long time to be wrestling with a situation or a person. I think it's a person, the way the story reads. When the man saw he could not overpower him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip, and the hip was wrenched out as he wrestled with the man. And the man said, "Let me go, for it's daybreak." Now, here's the thing that I really find interesting. So, it's not that this man, and we're going to get the identity in just a moment, this man couldn't beat Jacob. He was just wondering, is this guy ever going to quit? Hold one after the other, tapping out. Okay, let me ratchet this up a little bit. Let me throw his femur out of its socket. Have you ever had your shoulder come out? Anybody raise their hand? If you can. Oh, yeah, that's right, bro. You just did that, huh? How'd that feel? Did they do the thing? You should see him. Oh, man, I had that once. And I was like, oh, you you don't want to be a big baby, but you figure you're in the room with just another guy wearing a white coat. Like, okay, I'm gonna cry here. And then it happens to my toe, and oh man, when I read that, the fact that it was wrenched out. Then he says, okay, now I've put you in submission. I've wrenched your leg out of its socket. Let me go. Go ahead, read the next one. No. It's hard to read that without emotion. I'm not letting go until you bless me. Because the author of the story is telling us a little bit about what it appeared, but Jacob's in the story. He knows who this person is. In pain, cannot overcome God. What's your name? You had a flashback years earlier. Who are you, mummies? Who are you? I'm a liar. I took advantage of my own brother. I'm a cheat. I'm a horrible human being. I'm Jacob. Jacob. See, with his first dad, he lies. With his his heavenly father, I'm just this. Not anymore. He used to be Jacob. Liar, con, a deceiver, a grifter. But now you're going to be Israel, which means struggle with God. Because you have struggled with God and with humans, but you've overcome. Oh, awesome. Can you fix this? I'm not done talking. Tell me your name. Why do you ask my name? And he blessed them there, leaves, and Jacob calls this place significantly a standing stone. This is Peniel. I met God and I lived. Can you imagine the fear that guy lived with all this time until then? I can't meet him. I know he promised me, but now how do I make this right? He spent years trying to make things right as far as he understood it, but I can't make this right with you, because if I go to you, you're going to kill me. How many of you think I've thought that? I told you the story where I remember that moment the night before that whole break in my cycle of madness and violence that I thought, oh my gosh, if I meet him and he doesn't help me, I'm screwed, right? I mean, because if God gives up on you, what's left? And my life is spared. You've heard me say over the years that we have two videos running in our head. One of them is that we are these horrible human beings, just awful, awful people. We never do anything right, no one likes us. Kind of like the Charlie Brown syndrome, right? The other video is also just as insane. You're this amazing person, your sweat smells like Yves Saint Laurent cologne, you're never dirty, everyone loves you, you're the life of every party, you have the witty comeback for every situation. That's also a lie. Somewhere in there is a bit of truth, but it is only when you identify yourself honestly with God that you finally get your name from Him. See, when a person has that title identifier as I made this, I'm a that, I get it, and I don't spend a lot of time trying to correct that. I mean, I'm not that guy. But I know that until they first can say, I'm a follower of Jesus, everything else might be true of you to a degree, but it does not, listen to me, it does not define you. So when you've heard me say over the years, your past is not your future, this is where it's coming from. Your identity will be your ability. If you are a child of God, and if the story of God is true, if He's the Lord of the entire universe, He made everything, including you, ladies and gentlemen, He can fix you. Why would you hang on to some goofy, troubling moment that was just a sliver in the timeline of your existence? until you have that shift in your head, you're going to be trapped in trying how I'm going to make this right. As an abused adult, I'm going to try to make this right. I'm telling you, if I thought about that as myself, I would not be here this morning. I know that. I would always be looking for someone to fix me. And here's why that's a struggle. It's the whole submission thing, and by the way, I am not talking marriage, so don't go there. I'm talking about you and God. The struggle of submission is reconciling His will with ours, His desires of ours, His dreams of ours. And it's a clash. Because if there's one thing God can't seem to do, or won't do, it overrides your will. You want to stop Him? You can't. Right? That's the metaphor there with the struggle. You're reconciling two beings, the Creator and the created. But here's the beauty of submission. Let's go to that one. Oh, good. Thank you. Don't get ahead of me. That's what submission is. The action or fact of accepting or yielding to a superior force or to the will or authority of another person. So it doesn't have to be anyone better than you or superior, but it could be an equal. It could be someone less. There's a wrestling definition. There's an archaic definition of humility. Can we go to that, the one with the angel? There you go. Look at this amazing drawing. Look at your photographs, crazy. Your identity is your ability. Here's the beauty of submission. It's a state of openness. It's not weakness or illness. It's strength and health. It requires, listen to me, it requires discipline to get to a place of submission. It's an intentional action that we take to say, my body craves this, my heart wants this, I'd rather do this, I'm afraid of this moment. But you said, I am this person, that I am that man, I am this woman. And instead of struggling so that I can get there, I'm going to just live in the moment what you tell me I am. See, because what you tell yourself of who you are is who you live up to be. Who are you? See, that question still is echoing from the centuries down here. From Jacob down to us. Who are you? Tell me your name. No. Thank you. But I work alone. Submission is required. Listen to me now. Submission is required. It's not that God needs to gloat. Like, I win. I finally, submission is the only solution to our problems. You could go to book clubs to the end of the millennium. You could go to, I'm not trashing book clubs. So don't get that. I'm not trashing people who are professional counselors and therapists. But come on, there's a point where you finally own the fact that, okay, I have all these tools in front of me, but the only one that can transform me is God. It's the best position to learn, to gain insight and wisdom. Now here's the challenge, and I'll close with this. The challenge of submission is this, because we finally discover what we actually believe in a submitted moment. And then you finally begin to see your real disposition, temperament, psyche, and resistance to God. That's the most troubling part about being submitted to God, is that you realize, I don't want to. But it's the only place you're going to thrive. It's the only place you will live. It's the only place you become free from the crap that happened to you or that you've done. Let's be free people and live in the freedom of God's love. But first, you might have to just come clean to Him and say, I'm this person. So that He can finally say, I know. And I'm going to bless you. Amen.
For more information on getting connected with Mosaic Whittier Community, please visit mosaicwhittier.org.